Hello and welcome. Today we're making two different kinds of pulled pork recipes. One is really the easiest possible way and the other takes a tiny bit more work, but not really too much. On one quick note, these two versions on the other hand do not taste anything alike. They both taste great though, so you really can't go wrong with either. So for the easiest version, we only need our pork and pretty much any store-bought barbecue sauce. That is it for this one. I would suggest getting a barbecue sauce you are familiar with and already enjoy so you don't accidentally ruin a whole batch of pulled pork. You're going to need about 1/4 to 1/3 of a cup per pound of pork. So the only real difficulty with this version you may run into is if your cut of pork has too much fat. Starting with a leaner cut or trimming most of the external fat will give you better results here. The reason for this is how much liquid we are already adding with the barbecue sauce we are using. Since it's quite a bit of liquid, it would cause this version to become very thin, and it would keep dropping out of emulsion with the excess fat separating itself from the barbecue sauce if we don't make sure that we trim some of that back a little bit. You will want to give this about 3 hours to cook, and then we'll check to see if it pulls easily. Since we're going to be opening the lid and we're going to be losing some of the heat from the slow cooker, we also want to turn it over so that it can cook a bit more evenly after testing if it is not done already. If it does not pull easily, we want to give it another 30 minutes and check again. At the 3-hour mark, as you see here, mine was still far too hard to shred and the structure is a little too firm. So at 3.5 hours it looked like this, far better than 3, but not quite where we wanted it. After another 30 minutes, we can see it pulls easily and is ready to shred. Once it is at this point, I just use a set of forks to shred the pork and you are done. Since we rotated with each test, it'll be more evenly cooked, and the inside should be almost as easy to shred as the outside. I like this recipe because it's super easy, it's almost 100% hands-off time, and unless you have a cut of pork that is too fatty, it does not fail. And since you already know what the barbecue sauce tastes like, you know roughly what your pulled pork sandwich will taste like. If you're enjoying this video and you are not already a subscriber, subscribe for more like it. Okay, so this version is a bit more involved, but only just barely. It's just a matter of selecting the right meat and measuring a few spices, so still super easy and still very, very little hands-on time. This would be the one to make when you have people over and you want them to think you did a huge amount of work, since it doesn't taste like any of the commonly available barbecue sauces out there. So, besides the pork, for the slightly more complicated one here, we will also be needing 2 tablespoons ketchup, 2 tablespoons vinegar, 1 teaspoon liquid smoke, 1 teaspoon Worcestershire sauce, 2+ teaspoons of paprika, 1 teaspoon salt, 2 teaspoons pepper, 2 teaspoons garlic powder, 2 teaspoons onion powder. I usually add a bit more paprika and a bit more liquid smoke in mine because I like it slightly more spicy and smoky, and I've noticed you can basically go up to double the amounts on both of those and it's still perfectly fine. As you can see here, for this recipe we want to use a slightly more fatty cut. So while you might trim off any large fat caps, we do want to keep a good amount of fat left on or in the meat. It should look roughly like what you see me using here. From there, we just need to add all of our ingredients to the pot. To be honest, I didn't even stir them in until the first check and it was fine. But you might want to spread them out a little bit more than I did here, just to be safe. As long as you have roughly the same amount of fat as you see here, you'll be fine not adding any more liquid than we already have, since the majority of the liquid for our sauce will actually be coming from the fat being rendered out of the cut of pork. If your pork looks more like the one we used in the previous recipe, you'll probably want to add about 1/4 cup of water or vegetable stock. Vegetable stocks will not overpower any of our spices and just becomes sort of a back note flavor rather than a noticeable thing. For this, we want to follow the exact same pattern we used to test if the last one was done. Start with 3 hours on high, check to see if it's done. If not, flip it, recover for 30 more minutes. I find both tend to be around the 4-hour mark, but you'll want to check early because not all cuts perform the same over time. Once yours tears and looks like this, we are ready to serve and enjoy. So there we have 2 different versions of pulled pork. One that tastes like, well, whatever barbecue sauce you happen to buy that day, and the other that is a bit more complex and probably notably less sweet than most store-bought ones. Both are fantastic, super easy, like 98% hands-off time, so it's nice for those times where you're too busy to stop and be able to do a bunch of things, but you have enough time to check on something as it cooks over off on its own. So, with that, I want to thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a great day and a great meal.